Well, joining us for our Monday panel to discuss those issues and a few other things floating around the corridors of power are Liberal Senator for Victoria, James Paterson, and Labor Senator for New South Wales, Jenny McAllister. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Paterson, if I could start with you, we've had a Royal Commission, we've had banks hauled before House inquiries, we've had other investigations by the ACCC. What's new about this inquiry that's actually going to force some change here?
My hope is that banks use it as an opportunity to reflect on themselves about the decisions that they've been making and to demonstrate to the Australian people and to the government why it is they set interest rates the way that they do. Frankly, they haven't explained to the public or to the government why it is that they can't pass on the full value of interest rate cuts when the Reserve Bank reduces them. There might be good reasons to that, but I haven't heard them. I don't think the public's heard them, and it's an opportunity for banks to demonstrate that to the Australian people. Given
the banks are for-profit organisations, does this somewhat go against the Liberal Party's free market ideals to be saying that they need to start passing on these interest rate cuts and effectively eat into their profits?
Well, we don't plan on abolishing profit. We don't plan on outlawing profit. That's still something that we want to see from our banks. A profitable banking sector is in everyone's interest. The alternative is much, much worse, and we don't want to see that. And we're certainly not proposing to legislate to require banks to pass them on, but I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them to demonstrate to the public and the government through the ACCC in this inquiry why it is the way that they make the decisions that they do, and for them to reflect on those decisions.
Jenny McAllister, does Labor and do you personally see any merit in this type of inquiry?
Hopefully that we will get some good outcomes out of this. My concern is that the government really doesn't seem to have a particularly strong policy reform agenda at all. So they've been sitting on the last report from the ACCC into competition in the finance sector for a year. And there's been no reform around those issues at all. Only a month ago, Liberal senators on the Reps committee were sort of dismissing Rod Sims' call for sort of another inquiry. And now, after a fair bit of pressure from the public, from the Labor Party, there's another inquiry being established. Hopefully it will turn up some interesting recommendations about improving competition in the sector, but I just would point to a lack of enthusiasm from the Treasurer and the Treasury in actually making progress on reform. They've got a whole markets division in Treasury, answerable to the Treasurer, Mr Frydenberg. I don't see many proposals coming forward.
Back when Wayne Swan was Treasurer, Labor introduced a suite of measures to try to make it easier for customers to change banks if they wanted to shop around for a better deal. That's something that Treasurer Josh Frydenberg says will be looked at by this inquiry. Do you think the fact that this inquiry will look at that is an indication that those reforms haven't lived up to expectations?
Well, let's remember that these were reforms that the Liberal Party opposed when Labor was last in government. Yes, I think it is, though, time to look again at the ease with which customers switch between banks. Most customers don't. It's very time consuming, it takes a lot of effort. Anyone who's been through a process of trying to switch mortgages knows that it's actually not something you can do quickly. I think that is a fruitful area of exploration. But again, I just point to the fact that the Liberal Party have a really bad form on banks and actually acting on behalf of consumers. Their interests seem to be permanently the banking sector and protecting the banks. I think a ruthless focus on consumer interests would be a great improvement.
James Paterson, right of reply?
Yeah, I just want to say I think that's a bit unfair categorisation of the government's agenda. First of all, we're implementing at record pace the Royal Commission recommendations, and that's a serious amount of work for the Parliament to get through in 2 years, which we're going to do that. But more importantly than that, I take up Jenny's point on consumers. You're right, we should be consumer focused. We are consumer focused, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing the open banking reforms, which will allow consumers for the first time to have control over their data with their banks and to use that data to go to competitors of banks to move more easily. That's something that this government is just getting on with and doing, and I think it will enhance competition in the sector and deliver better outcomes for consumers.
Implementing the findings of the Banking Royal Commission, as you said there, in record pace. The Coalition has been accused of dragging its feet there. There weren't that many sitting weeks between the findings of that Royal Commission being delivered for Parliament to even deal with the less complicated measures that was put off until after the election. Do you think the public really buy that argument?
Well, they may or may not, but it's the truth. This legislation is extremely complex. It is not straightforward, and if we rushed it and stuffed it up, that wouldn't help anyone. It wouldn't help consumers, it wouldn't help the industry, it wouldn't help the economy. We're doing it as fast as we can. In fact, some of the normal consultation processes that Treasury normally undertakes with this kind of legislation is being significantly expedited to get it done more quickly. A lot of the normal processes around a regulatory impact statement have been cut or shortened in order to get this done more quickly. So the Parliament has not moved more quickly on a body of legislation than this ever before, and we're going to do it because we're sincere about implementing those recommendations.
We'll just move on to one other issue because there is plenty to get across today on the issue of the Medevac legislation. Why will the government be pressing ahead with this legislation, considering that the bulk of the evidence that was presented to Senate inquiries, the bulk of the discussion that's happened in the public argues against the Coalition's claims that this piece of legislation has opened up the floodgates to people trying to get a backdoor into Australia?
I think Christian Porter outlined it really clearly with your colleague this morning, Matthew, in that this is a question of principle at the end of the day. Should the ultimate decision maker about whether someone comes to Australia be someone who's accountable to the Australian public, and in that case a politician or a minister, or should it be a group of doctors who are unaccountable, who are unelected, who cannot be reviewed if they make a decision the public disagree with? Ultimately, this is about whether we are a sovereign country or not, whether the people of Australia can set the terms of how people come to this country. Everyone agrees if people are in need of urgent medical care on Manus or Nauru that they should be brought to Australia, and many were being brought to Australia prior to this law being passed, but that was being done under the oversight and control of a minister who's accountable to the Parliament and the public, and that's a fundamental difference than what's happening under this legislation.
So you're suggesting that doctors might be allowing people into the country who actually don't need medical treatment?
Well, without even knowing whether they are or not, I think in principle it is wrong to outsource a decision about who comes to our country, about our immigration system, to someone who's unelected and unaccountable. That decision has to be made by someone who can be held to account for how they make those decisions, and a doctor or a couple of doctors cannot be.
Jenny McAllister, Jackie Lambie is likely to be the deciding vote here. How confident are you, from Labor's perspective, that you've been able to convince her to see your point of view?
Well, Jackie's vote is up to Jackie, but I would make this point. James's answer tells you quite a lot about the Coalition's approach to this. It is all about ideology and not very much about the evidence. The evidence is that actually quite a limited number of people have come to Australia under the provisions of the Medevac bill. We've got doctors all over the country saying this is working. The peak doctors' organisations say it works. And James doesn't really characterise the scheme correctly. The minister retains the ability to exclude someone if he does not think that there are genuine medical grounds, if that person has a criminal record or if that person presents a risk to national security. Those are reasonable provisions. They give the minister discretion to keep people out who genuinely present a danger to our country. But on balance, why shouldn't the minister listen to medical advice? And if somebody is judged to be in need of medical treatment that is not available in PNG or in Nauru, they ought to be brought to Australia. They're in our care. This system is working, and we continue to support these laws.
Something I want to touch on very briefly, because question time is racing towards us, is the issue of Julian Assange. Barnaby Joyce has today said that the federal government should be doing more to stop his extradition to the United States. Is this a failure of diplomacy on Australia's part, that it looks likely he will end up there?
Ordinarily, a citizen who's charged with an offence in another country or subject to legal proceedings is provided with consular support, and it's my understanding that Mr Assange has been receiving consular support. I don't support calls for something beyond that, and I would also, I guess, note that when a case is ongoing before the courts, either here or somewhere else, we wouldn't normally comment on the specifics of that case. We'd ordinarily allow the legal system to run its course.
Just briefly, James Paterson, is this a different situation because we're talking about the United States seeking the extradition of an Australian citizen as opposed to a country like China?
I think it is different. The United Kingdom and the United States are rule of law countries. There is no political intervention which the Australian government can make or any other government can make into our independent legal system to change the way a judge will decide a case. It has to be heard on the facts, on the evidence, according to the law. This is not the case in many other countries in the world. Sadly, we know there are Australian citizens detained right now in China and Iran who are not facing free and fair legal systems. I'm very concerned about that. And the Australian government does have a greater obligation to assist those citizens. But the United Kingdom is not not some Tim Pock dictatorship where someone is going to face an unfair legal system. It's a robust, independent legal system.
James Paterson, Jenny McAllister, we must let you depart our studio for question time. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.